Hello everyone, my name is Arya and welcome to the video. Back a while ago, I made a pistol tier list, about I think 8 months ago as of this point, and then a bunch of balance changes came out and 2.0 happened, and then there was a bunch of events and everything, and oh, it was just great. I was going to do more tier lists, and then I just didn't feel like it because things were changing so much that it didn't feel right to do any tier lists because, again, I didn't want to have it be invalidated like immediately after making it with the next event that was coming in like a month. But it seems like we've kind of gotten to the end of that. Things are dying down a little bit more. Hopefully, we have a bit of a stretch where maybe things go a little more untouched for the next little bit. So I want to start with shotguns because shotguns are probably one of my favorite weapon classes in the game. I like playing close range, and I feel like I have a pretty decent grasp on how to use all these shotguns. I have a pretty good amount of time with most of them. I'll get to that in a second, but shotguns are in a really, really, really good place right now, I feel like. There still can be some issues with trading, but the trade window is a lot better now, at least personally I find. I think it kind of depends on what servers you play on, but at least for US West, I don't find trading to be that much of an issue. It feels like fair trades most of the time. And I don't think that there are necessarily any bad shotguns in the game currently. I think they're all pretty good. All the changes that came with 2.0 back in August of last year really tightened up the spread on a lot of them, increased the overall kill range on all of the hand cannons, or I guess they're called shorties now. Shotguns are just really, really good now, and I feel like especially shorties are in a much better place, and I feel like they're kind of dominating the meta right now. You see a lot more people taking like quartermaster hand cannons over something like fanning or other close range options, melee as well. Which is kind of why you don't really see as much melee nowadays, I think, because again, shotguns are just in such a dominant place right now. Respectfully, I don't think they're the best weapon class in the game, but still, they're just really good. I also don't have a script for this like I usually do, so I'm just kind of going off the cuff. If I'm stuttering a little bit, if I repeat myself a little bit, it's probably just going to happen. My ADHD brain's just going to do that. Anyways, as for ranking these, I'm going to try and rank these as objectively as possible based on things like combat effectiveness, non-PvP utility, so like if something's silenced or if it has like a melee attachment that can free up like a tool slot or something, stuff like that. Price point, special ammo availability, whether or not the weapon needs traits to be good or not or to function, and also ease of use. Important thing for shotguns here, I'm not including slugs in this tier list. I'm looking at these shotguns in every other capacity except for slugs, because with slugs, every shotgun is like A or S tier, and that's just going to be boring. So there will still be a lot of things in A and S tier, but I don't want absolutely everything in there. So I also won't be including the drilling or the Lamat trees. I will rank those eventually in my pistol and rifle tier lists, but I feel like the shotguns on those are kind of more like an added benefit, and it's not the main selling point of the weapon. It's not the main firing mode that people are going to be using most of the time. That's kind of just there for when you need it. So I'll rank those in there in the rifle and pistol tier lists, not in this one. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with this. Again, I'm trying to keep it as objective as possible, but with how hunt balancing is and with how viable everything can be, and just with the nature of tier lists, like there's always going to be disagreements. So let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you agree. Let me know why. And yeah, try and be civil down there, I hope. Anyways, starting off, we have the Auto 5, aka the Crowning King. This is the most expensive shotgun in the game, and in my opinion, it is the most volatile shotgun in the entire game. And what I mean by that, it is volatile as in you can absolutely steamroll an entire compound depending on their loadouts. If you run into like a trio that has like nothing but like rifles and like no real close range capabilities, you can just get up in their face and absolutely dumpster them because of its fast fire rate, and high spread, I guess, means you don't really have to be accurate with it. You can just spam people down. But it's also volatile in the sense that sometimes if someone does have a close range shotgun or close range capabilities, you can just trade with someone or die to like a Romero that costs like a tenth of what you're paying. So keep in mind, this is a $600 shotgun. That's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. So sometimes you just get down by something that is infinitely cheaper than you, and you wasted $600 on fighting someone who killed you with a $60 shotgun. It definitely is still strong. It doesn't need any traits to perform well. It doesn't eject on reload, doesn't need bullet grub or anything like that. And it is probably it's probably the easiest to use shotgun in the entire game, just because, again, it has that super high fire rate and you can just spam it. You have like 5 shells available to you. It's very forgiving if you miss a shot. You won't be getting many one-hit kills with it, even though it is a long-barreled shotgun. The spread on it is just so wide that you're just not really going to be getting those one-hit kills very often. But again, with how many shots you have available to you and how fast it shoots, you're not really aiming for one-hit kills anyways. So I'm gonna put the Crowning King not actually in S tier. I'm gonna put it in A tier, definitely top of A tier, because I think that this thing is just so volatile. And $600 for a shotgun, when again you're much more likely to trade with people because you're fighting at close range. I just don't think $600 is worth it. I think there are better shotguns that give you more bang for your buck on this list. Definitely still good, but it's going in A tier. As for the Auto 4 Shorty, or the Baby Crown, I think this thing was kind of a mistake. It's way more reasonably priced at only $300, which is still expensive as far as hand cannons go, but $300 is not going to break the bank. It's a pretty reasonable price point. It fits into basically any loadout if you bring Quartermaster, and I think it's pretty much, as far as I'm aware, in like 6 stars, it is like the go-to hand cannon for sweaty loadouts. You'll often see it paired with like, God, over the past couple months, it's been like Silent Crag, Auto 4 Shorty, like on every other person, it feels like. This thing is just an absolute menace. The spread is pretty crazy, and it only has 4 shots instead of 5. But again, as kind of like a backup, someone's pushing me and I just need to deal with one person. This thing, it's hard to go wrong with, because again, it's very easy to use, and unless someone else has a shotgun and they kind of get the jump on you, you're probably going to outgun someone, just by volume of fire. You can chase people down with it because again, it has lots of shots. It doesn't have a ton of ammo, but it's just such a pain in the butt to play against. And the fact that you can quartermaster it with like a full-size rifle, meaning that you never really know if someone has this in their pocket until they eventually whip it out. Yeah, this thing's going in S tier. I don't care. I would like to see this thing get nerfed a little bit. I think that the price is a little bit too cheap. I think $400 or maybe even a little bit higher is maybe a bit more reasonable, because where it stands right now, it's not that much more expensive than some of the other hand cannons out there, and it's like infinitely better. Moving on to the next tree, though, we have the Rival. This is the old reliable. It's probably one of like the fan favorite weapons in the game, I think, at least. I don't think I've ever met anyone who dislikes the Rival. I'm sure there's gonna be people in the comments proving me wrong, though. But this thing's great. It is a lot more forgiving than some other shotguns like the Romero, specifically because it has 2 shots instead of 1, and it has a very fast fire rate. So those follow-up shots, if you whiff your first shot, or if you don't get the actual down on it, if you're a little too far away, yeah, you can follow up really, really quickly with this thing. It's great. It has access to a lot of special ammo types, which very much so increases its versatility as well. This thing can be an absolute 2-tap monster with things like Flechette, or you can burn bars off super quickly with Dragon's Breath. Those ammo types have their own restrictions in their own right, but the Rival can work with a variety of things and do it very well. It does have a pretty wide spread, and like I said, 1-taps can be a little bit inconsistent because of that wider spread, but the 2-taps are really fast, so follow-ups aren't really an issue. It can also have some ammo issues. You only have 10 shots with it, and because you're very heavily incentivized to fire 2 shots in quick succession, yeah, you can run dry with this thing pretty quickly, especially if you're running special ammo, so an ammo box or playing around supply points is recommended. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think I'll put it probably right behind the Crown. It's held back by other shotguns one-hitting better, I find. You could probably make an argument for it to go up into S. It is very cheap at only $150, but I think that the Rival is very good. It's just that it doesn't one-hit very consistently, so it will get outgunned by some of the other shotguns on this list. Moving on to the Rival Shorty, though. Imagine a Rival with all the things that held it back, and they're just increased by a little bit. It's not a bad weapon by any means, don't get me wrong. It's a good little backup, pocket shotgun. but the ammo economy on it's even worse. The two tap potential, you really have to fire both barrels to get those kills, unless you are like within kissing distance of someone. Um, it's still good. It's just not quite as it's not as good as some of the other hand cannons. It's not as consistent as they are. I'm gonna put it in B tier. As for the Rival Shorty Mace, though, it's basically just a direct upgrade, if only a slight one. The mace is nice for clearing out smaller AI, especially immolators can be really good. It can free you up if you're not wanting to bring like dusters or a knuckle knife or something. Can be nice for dealing with that. Not great against bosses and larger targets. It's not great against players either, but it is an upgrade. I don't really see much of a reason not to bring the mace over the shorty, except for maybe like if you have a skin on the shorty, not the mace, but still good. Still like it. It'll go in B tier. The Rival Trauma is a lot of the same story. It's basically just the Rival, but slightly better. The Trauma version on it is actually a lot better for clearing out heavier AI, so things like armoreds or targets or even players sometimes too, although be careful with that because the swing on it's a little bit weird. You have to be really, really close. You basically have to be touching your opponent to one-hit them with it. But it can come in handy if you do whiff both of your shots, and again, it's nice for taking down bosses. A slight but direct upgrade. Moving on to the Romero, though. The Angry Pipe of Hunt Showdown, as a lot of people call it. My Twitch chat calls it that. The cheapest shotgun tree in the entire game, starting at only $66, and for something going down to as low as $46. Yeah, this thing's pretty good. It's no pun intended. A lot of people are very hit or miss with this thing. Either they love it or they hate it, because in a very different strain from the Auto 5, it can be kind of volatile. It does have the longest one-hit kill range out of any shotgun in the entire game, which is, kind of what you'd expect from a shotgun that only has one shot before a reload. That being said, if you miss that shot, if you are slightly off of that shot, yeah, you only have one, you have to reload. It's not very good for dealing with multiple people pushing you, because again, you have to kind of work around like moving around the compound and dealing with them that way, so you have some space to reload. But it is really, really good, and it is a very it has a lot of utility. It has probably the most utility out of any shotgun tree in the entire game because you can take 2 ammo types with it, giving some extra versatility there. So you can burn people with like Dragon's Breath or Star Shell and still have buckshot for your actual like PvP ammo type, or I guess slugs too if you want to go that way. Or you can bring like half penny shot. That's usually how I like to run the Romero, is half regular, half penny shot. Because penny shot is amazing for clearing out, again, like meatheads, bosses, concertina armoreds. It's loud, but it gets the job done really quickly. It can be a little bit hard to use the Romero. Again, if you are cutting your ammo in half, you don't have a ton of ammo. So you really have to be landing those one shots to make it work. So some people love it. I personally love it, but I also understand why some people hate it, because again, it can be frustrating shooting someone and they don't die and then you're stuck reloading there. So I'm going to put it in B tier. I think that's a pretty decent place for it. It is probably the most bang for your buck shotgun out of all of them there. It's a great budget weapon. As for the Romero Talon, again, direct upgrade, if only a slight one. The Talon's great for clearing out AI. It's basically the same deal as the Rival Trauma. You can just swing it at stuff and it kills it. Can one-hit players as well. Has a little bit more range. Feels a little bit nicer to use compared to the Trauma. I don't know if they have a longer range, but it definitely feels like it. And it's a lot better on the Romero too, just because, again, with a much lower capacity, only one shot, you can still bum rush people, or if multiple people are pushing you, you still have an option that isn't just reloading. So pretty good there. As for the Romero Shorty, this thing basically amplifies all of the gripes that people have with the Romero, because the barrel is quite a bit shorter. It still has, I think, the longest one-hit kill range out of all of the hand cannons, but the hand cannon differences are not. The hand cannon ranges are pretty similar, so you only get like an extra meter or two at most over the other hand cannons in the game. That being said, it does definitely amplify the amount of versatility that you have because you can quartermaster this thing, bring it with a full-size rifle. Um, it can work really well. Again, it's just like a sort of pocket boss killer. And because you don't have to worry as much about only having or having less PvP oriented ammo, because you're typically using hand cannons as more of a backup, anyways. So it's still very good. I'm going to put it in B tier, probably right above the, right above the rival. No, there we go. As for the Romero hatchet, same deal. Slight but direct upgrade. I don't see much of a reason to actually take it over the Romero Shorty. Technically, Romero Shorty does reload a tiny bit faster. Not by much, though. It's like 0.2 of a second or something. So Romero Hatchet is just great. You have, again, Hatchet to deal with AI. You can clear grunts with with a light swing, which is nice. It's not that great against players. I think it can one-hit kill, but it's very inconsistent if it actually chooses to or not, because sometimes you just hit the arms and then it doesn't do anything. So you have to hit someone in the chest. Only use that if you are like very like close range, last ditch effort, personally, because I have had bad experiences running at people thinking I got them with the melee, and then they just whip out their knuckle knife and then I'm dead. So Romero Hatchet's good. Direct upgrade over the Romero Shorty. As for the Alamo, this is a bit of a weird one. The Alamo, oh, what am I doing? The Alamo is probably the worst shotgun, or like worst full size shotgun in the game right now. This thing used to be pretty good. It used to have like quite a bit faster fire rate compared to the Romero, but then they changed it a while back, and I think it is still technically faster, but it's barely faster, and it still feels very slow and clunky, and you're getting rid of all of the utility that the Romero actually has because you can only take a single ammo type with it. So you can't bring like Dragon's Breath and like Buckshot. Like if you're bringing Dragon's Breath to like burn people, you are committing to bringing Dragon's Breath. It also has a very, very lengthy reload once the actual Alamo tube is empty. It takes like well over 10 seconds to get this thing like fully stocked up again. It's crazy. The Alamo just kind of sucks. There's not much of a reason to bring it over the Romero. You do still have that really long one-hit kill range, but the Romero's cheaper. It has more utility. The Alamo's just not in a very good place right now. You don't really see it that often, and that's kind of for good reason because the Romero is just a bit of a direct upgrade. So I'm going to put the Alamo in C tier. Moving on to the Slate, this thing is pretty good. No traits required. You don't have to worry about like ejecting on reload. That's just like kind of the big one for some shotguns. It has a very fast fire rate. It's a very good shotgun for playing aggressively, and you kind of want to play aggressively because it has a medium-sized barrel. It doesn't have as long of a one-tap range as a lot of other shotguns on this list. It's maybe more in line with like the rival, where you probably need that second shot to kill past about like 10 meters. So you really want to get up in people's face with it, but thankfully it is very good for that because it has a pretty decent capacity, and again, you can just top it up whenever you need to. So Slate's very good. It is a little bit pricey at $333. It could be, there are other shotguns on this list that are maybe a little bit cheaper, a little bit more bang for your buck, but the Slate is very good. Unfortunately, it has kind of been outclassed by another shotgun that we'll get to here in a second. Look further down the list. It's been outclassed by another shotgun that got buffed recently, and as of right now, it is still very, very good. But I think that there is a shotgun that just does what it wants to do a lot better, and because of that, I'm going to put it in A tier. I think I'll probably put it above the Crown because again, both are very like aggressive shotguns. The Slate's just like half the price, and I feel like it's a lot more effective than the Crown. I might change that opinion over time. I'm not sure. The Crown is definitely the shotgun that I have the least amount of experience with, but I find I die to Slates a lot more than I do to Crowns. So the Slate, I think, is just more bang for your buck. Moving on to Slate Riposte, same deal. You know what I'm going to say. It is a slight but direct upgrade. You can actually one-hit grunts with it, which is nice with a light attack, so that'll save you some stamina there. You don't have to worry as much about, you know, consuming your stamina like you would with something like a Talon or a Trauma. It's pretty low stamina consumption in that regard. Good for dealing with bosses, can be nice for dealing with players. You get less utility out of it compared to something like the Romero Talon or the Rival Trauma, because the Slate is pretty high capacity anyways, so you're probably just best off, unless you are completely dry and you have no other options, you're probably best just going for that shot anyways. But again, it can be nice. I think the main utility to it is just it's nice for taking down bosses and grunts. So good shotgun, stays up in A tier. Moving on to the Spectre. This thing is kind of a monster. The Spectre was already really good and really consistent, and in a lot of people's eyes considered one of the better shotguns in the game before it got buffed. Then, at the start of the last event with the Murder Circus, they decided to just take it and buff the fire rate on it, which was like the main limiting factor of the Spectre. It has a very long one-hit range that is beaten only by the Romero, is very cost efficient at only $188, and it can hold multiple shells, unlike the Romero, so you still get that quite long one-hit kill range, but you don't have to worry about reloading after every single shot. But it had a very slow fire rate compared to things like the Rival, compared to like the Slate, the Crown. It was pretty slow by comparison. For some reason, they decided to buff that to have the same cycle speed as the Slate. So it now shoots 1 shell a second. It's great. It's basically just a Slate, but better. The only thing that the Slate really has over it is that the Spectre does kind of need bullet grubber. It's a lot harder to go for those partial reloads. So you have to be a little bit more deliberate with when you're actually firing and when you're reloading. Because again, that if you're constantly partially reloading, constantly ejecting unused shells, then that can lead to some ammo issues, especially if you have special ammo equipped. But the Spectre is just a monster now. It already was a monster before. It's probably, I would say, if you want to get into shotguns, this is the best place to start, because again, it's pretty forgiving with a relatively fast fire rate. Again, not as fast as things like the Rival or the Crown, but it's one shot a second is still pretty good. And you get that super long one hit kill range, and you get a lot of special ammo too. You can run like Flechette, you can run Dragon's Breath. You are limited to only one ammo type, so you do have to be conscious of that. But the Spectre is just, it's an absolute monster. And I'm going to put it all the way up in S tier above the Auto 4. I think this is the best shotgun in the game as it currently stands. Moving on to Spectre Bayonet, it does have a shorter barrel than the base Spectre, so this is the first melee variant of a shotgun that isn't just a direct upgrade. So you have a lower one-hit kill range, and you have more spread. It can be nice if you have something like an ammo type loaded that is not a, that is not a close range ammo type, like Flechette or Dragon's Breath, something that isn't very consistent at one hitting. It can be nice for that. It can be nice for boss clearing, but in most situations, in like 9 out of 10 situations, I'd just rather have the Spectre. So it's not a bad shotgun by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I'm probably going to put it in here. I'll put it below the Romero and above the Rival. I think that's a good place for it. Moving on to the Spectre Shorty, though, this thing is probably the best all-around hand cannon after the Crowning King, after the Auto 4 Shorty. This thing is good. It has high-ish capacity in terms of hand cannons. It has, I believe, 4 shots. Fast fire rate, again, it got that same fire rate buff that the Spectre did, and it has a pretty decent one-hit kill range. And again, the only real limiting factor to it is you just kind of want bullet grubber, and that's kind of about it. It's probably the best all-around hand cannon, especially if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper than the 300 price point on the Auto 4. So I'm going to go ahead and put it probably an A tier. I'll put it behind the Rival. I don't think it's better than the Rival by any means. Moving on to the Terminus, though, this is probably my favorite shotgun in the entire game. It did catch a bit of a nerf during the Murder Circus, a bit of an indirect one as well, because this thing needs levering desperately. Otherwise, it is basically just a worse version of the Spectre or the Slate. With levering, it is probably the best stand your ground weapon in the entire game. It has a fast fire rate, high capacity. It can feel a little bit clunky to use, but I'll get into that in a second. The nerf came with levering being increased from a 4-point trait to a 7-point trait, making it a lot harder to take right off the bat. meaning that the Terminus doesn't really have as much, or you can't really rock it right off the bat unless you want to, refund all of your traits and forgo some maybe the more important ones like Necro or if you take like Conduit or Pack Mule, whatever you take. I usually take Necro. So if I'm bringing this, it usually means that I am foregoing Necro to get levering. So you're going very all in the Terminus. If you're on a fresh hunter, it's very high committal, and sometimes you just can't bring everything that you want. So, which can be especially hard as a solo, because again, you really want Necro as a solo. But the Terminus is still really good. When you have levering, it is an absolute monster. It also has access to things like Flechette and Dragon's Breath. With Dragon's Breath, the Terminus is basically the closest you can get to like a flamethrower in Hunt. It is a beautiful thing to watch, especially on night maps. I highly recommend giving it a try. It does eject on reload, so Bullet Grubber is kind of nice to have. And I find it works better as more of a defensive shotgun. You definitely can play aggressive with it. Again, it's kind of in the same vein as like with the Auto 5, where if no one has a shotgun in the lobby or in the compound that you're fighting in, you can just kind of walk around and like just steamroll people with this thing. The issue of where it comes in a bit or where it becomes a bit clunky is while you're levering it, levering actually locks you into a walking animation, or not a walking animation, but it stops you from sprinting while you're levering, and it will not allow you to sprint until you are done your active like levering cycle. So sometimes you fire this thing and you go to try and duck behind a corner or something. Maybe you whiff your shot. You just want to pop a couple at someone. Or maybe there's like multiple people and you downed one and you need to back behind to like go for a reload or something. Sometimes you just get stuck. Sometimes you cannot sprint back behind whatever cover you were holding or you were hiding behind, because the levering locks you into there. It makes you a very easy target because you are stuck walking there, which can be a bit of an issue. So again, I found the Terminus is a bit better used in a more defensive role. Let the enemies come to you, because in that situation where you don't have to worry about hiding behind cover, you can just kind of stand your ground. Yeah, the Terminus is an absolute monster. So it's good. It's not as great as some of the other ones, but I think it's probably going to go. I'm going to put the Terminus in A tier, probably behind the Rival. Like the Rival, more people will like the Rival, and the Rival doesn't need traits. The Terminus is really, really held back by that clunkiness and also the fact that it absolutely needs levering to be good. And then lastly, we have the Terminus Shorty. This thing is still very reliant on traits. I would say probably even more because, again, it's pretty much just a worst Spectre Shorty if you don't have levering. And especially if you're trying to put this in a Quartermaster loadout, Quartermaster plus levering, that's expensive. That's what, 13 trait points right there. So the Terminus is kind of hard to make use of. If you're bringing something that already has levering, like say a Winfield or like a Centennial or a Mako, then it can be maybe a bit, I can see you bringing it a bit more. You get some use because you already have levering. But 13 trait points to bring this in a Quartermaster loadout, pretty high committal. I'd say just go with the Spectre Shorty. It's not bad. It is a very good like spammy shotgun if you have levering. So for that, I don't think I can put it any lower than B tier. But just Spectre Shorty is just better, or obviously the Auto 4 Shorty as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this probably here, probably just bottom of B tier. It's not bad. It's just way too reliant on traits and expensive traits too. But yeah, this is my little tier list here. Relatively short one because there just aren't a ton of shotguns in the game. The pistol and the rifle tier list will probably be a lot longer, but this is still fun. I hope this doesn't get invalidated like immediately. I hope we don't see like a ton of balancing changes for shotguns once the next update comes out, whenever it comes out. But I think I did a pretty good job here. If you agree with me or disagree with me, whatever, leave me in the comments knowing your thoughts on it, because I'd love to know. And subscribe if you're new. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.